Good morning, St. Philip's family, and welcome to this devotion. If you have your Bibles, please open them to John chapter 5, and we're going to begin reading at verse 2. It's the story of Jesus' encounter with a man who had been sick for 38 years. And it's a powerful picture of the way that Jesus heals a person physically, but more importantly, the way that Jesus heals a person spiritually. So let's go ahead and take a look at the text, and then we're going to come back and look at three very important points in closer detail. Now there is in Jerusalem by the sheep gate a pool, in Aramaic called Bethesda, which has 5 roofed colonnades. In these lay a multitude of invalids, the blind, the lame, and the paralyzed. One man was there who had been an invalid for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he had already been there a long time, he said to him, "Do you want to be healed?" The sick man answered him, "Sir, I have no one to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up. And while I am going, another steps down before me." Jesus said to him, "Get up, take your bed, and walk." And at once the man was healed, and he took up his bed and walked. One of the interesting features of the fourth gospel is that Jesus' miracles are described by the evangelist as signs. Now, a sign, of course, is something that points to a reality that is greater than itself. The sign is not the destination. I've sometimes said that if you're traveling up I-95 and you decide you want to visit south of the border, you don't stop at the sign that says only 10 miles to Pedro at south of the border. You don't stop at the sign that says only 2 miles to air-conditioned rooms at south of the border. You don't even stop at the sign that says you just passed south of the border. We realize that the sign is not the destination. It points to something beyond itself. Well, that's what these miracles in John's gospel are meant to do. They are meant to point us to a reality beyond themselves. And this particular miracle here in John chapter 5 is a masterpiece. It is a miracle that points us to Jesus' true identity as the Son of God and the great physician. And it is a miracle that points us, as all great signs do, to a deeper reality in terms of ourselves, to who we are spiritually speaking, as broken, fallen men and women. The story is, as I said, a masterpiece, and it's familiar. The story goes that one day Jesus was walking through Jerusalem, and on the outskirts of the city he encountered a pool called Bethesda. It was a pool that most people believed had some sort of healing properties. It was probably built over a well or an artesian spring, and it was believed that when the water bubbled up, it was an angel that was stirring it. And if you could be the first one into the water, whatever physical affliction you might have, it would automatically be healed. Well, Jesus saw a man at the back of the crowd, a man we're told who'd been an invalid for 38 years. And Jesus came to him and asked the question, "Do you want to be made well?" The man immediately answered, "Of course, I want to be made well. But the problem," he said, "is that every time I try to get into the water, when it is stirred, someone gets there ahead of me, and I miss out." As I said, it is a picture of the human condition. If you think about it, this description of the crowd gathered around this pool is an apt description of human beings, lost in sin and nature's night. You and I are the blind, we are the lame, we are the paralyzed. That's how John Newton described us in his great hymn, Amazing Grace. He said, "I once was lost, but now I'm found. I was blind, but now I see." We human beings are often blind to God's true greatness and to God's justice and holiness. And we are sometimes even blind to the sin in our own lives. And we're not just blind to spiritual things, we're also paralyzed, we're lame, we're incapable of saving ourselves. That was the case with this man. He couldn't get into the water in time to be healed. And you and I are incapable of saving ourselves. And yet it's into this pitiful situation that the Son of God comes. And he asks the question, do you want to be made well? Do you want to be healed? Do you want to be made whole? There is an affliction in every single one of our lives. You may be suffering with something physical, but whether you're suffering with something physical or not, we are all afflicted with a disease called sin. We are all OS positive, original sin positive. And this is a disease that leads to death, spiritual and physical death. And we cannot save ourselves from it. But there is one who comes and asks the question, the same one who asked the question of this man by the pool in Bethesda, do you want to be made whole? Well, if your answer to Jesus is, yes, I want to be made whole, but I am capable of doing it myself. I cannot get into the pool, as it were, in time. Somebody always gets there ahead of me. Then Jesus commands 3 things to be done. He commanded this man to do 3 things in order to be made whole. And these 3 things are the 3 steps that are necessary for spiritual healing. What's the first thing that Jesus commanded this man to do? The first thing Jesus said is, believe in me. In other words, Jesus said, stop believing in yourself. Stop trying to save yourself. Stop trusting in yourself, but instead trust in me. Jesus said to the man, walk. Now, this man hadn't been able to walk for 38 years. Jesus was commanding him to do something that he was incapable in and of his own strength of doing. Jesus was telling him that if he was going to be healed, he had to stop trusting in himself and begin to trust in the Lord. That's the first thing, my friends, that is necessary if you are going to be healed. Whatever it is that has a grip on your life, maybe it's some kind of an addiction, maybe it's some kind of besetting sin, but if you want to be liberated from it, you have to stop trusting in yourself. Stop thinking that you have the ability to somehow free yourself or liberate yourself, that you can do it in and of your own strength. And instead, you have to trust Jesus Christ. The second thing that the Lord commanded this man to do was that he had to take up his bed. That bed represented his brokenness, his inability to walk. And what Jesus was telling him when he said, pick up your bed and take it with you, Jesus was saying there would be no provision for relapse. This is Jesus' way of saying whatever it is in your life that keeps you coming back to this broken life, you have to get rid of it. There can be no provision for relapse. You can't go back to your old way of living. That's what the Apostle Paul meant when he said we are new creations. Because you're a new creation, you can't go back to your old way of living. There's nowhere to go but forward. So you take up your mat. And here's the third thing that the man was told by Jesus to do. He was to walk. It's not enough simply to be healed. It's not enough to stand on your own 2 feet. Once you are healed by Jesus Christ, once you have made no provision for relapse, you have to begin to walk. You have to begin to follow hard after Jesus all the days of your life. When you are saved from something, but my friends, you are saved for something. For a life of discipleship, for a life of servanthood. And that's what Jesus commanded this man to do. Now, we don't know exactly what happened to him after this, but I can't help but think that having been touched so powerfully by Jesus, that this man went on to follow the Lord all the days of his life. And my friends, that's what we are called to do. We are all spiritually blind, lame, and paralyzed. But Jesus Christ comes to save us. And he commands that we trust in him, that we make no provision for relapse. We take up our bed. We're not coming back to that pool again. And the third thing he commands us to do is to follow him, to walk hard after him, to find in him everything that our hearts desire. Healing for our bodies, for our hearts, for our spirits, for our souls. May we learn the lesson that this man learned, and may we find in Jesus the healing that we all desire. God bless you, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon.